Hello.
Hi.
How are you, Minling?
Hello.
2 times in 1 week. My lucky week. How are you today?
Good.
Good.
Now we are now 8 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay. Where are you calling from?
Germany,
Germany.
Southwest.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, excellent. Yeah, we have what, like 44 people in like registered for this, but with it originally being last week and me changing the time and things. So I hope I didn't mess people up in their schedules and being able to attend. So hopefully we can get a good crowd
I'm
here.
so I did not read the book yet. May I join as
Oh,
well?
yeah, no problem. No problem. We usually get maybe a few people who have read it, but most people don't.
Okay, great.
And that's totally fine. I think that the topic, and you honestly, it's a little bit selfish on my part because reading books is good, but teaching books is better for me because then I really learn the topic and I really understand it and I study and learn it. So when I'm teaching it, it helps me learn the content more, but then it also helps our students who haven't had a chance to read it and still are interested in the topic. So yeah, perfectly fine. And these book club meetings really are just about discussion. I'm interested in hearing from all of you and hearing your thoughts and insight of what you're experiencing. So it's really just a cool opportunity to bring up a topic that is probably applicable to all of us or something that we all are wanting, all are working on, and see how it applies in everybody's life. Okay.
Yes.
So it's great. So with this format, with the study group, I usually have you kind of, keep your microphone off and things like that. And you can definitely toggle on and off. But for the book club, I don't mind if microphones are open. I would love to see your faces because it's more of a discussion. It's just an open discussion. So all of you, yeah, if you can turn on your video, it helps just feel more personal. And then with the microphone, you can kind of decide for yourself. If you have background noise that's distracting, you can mute. If you feel like you want to stay unmuted and just be able to speak up whenever, that's great too. So welcome everyone to our Pro Book Club meeting. Thank you for being patient with me and changing the schedule around a bit. I woke up on Wednesday morning last week and I could hardly talk, and it made me nervous because I did not want to host a meeting the next day and not have a voice. So I am glad that we're able to reschedule and be here together today. So I'm glad to have you all here, and we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. For those who haven't been to our book club meetings, welcome. And this is really just more of an open discussion. It's an opportunity to practice conversation, practice English, practice in a social setting, and especially applicable to our book today, How to Be Yourself, Overcoming Social Anxiety. Because how many of us are sitting here a little nervous, a little bit of butterflies in our stomach, just even being in a little bit of a social setting here. At least I know I get that way every time I jump into one of these meetings, and I just know it's part of the process, right? That little bit of anxiety is something that I have lived with my whole life, and have just kind of worked to overcome throughout my life. But having this book has been really unique in being able to have some tools and some understanding. Some of the things are things I've kind of figured out already, and other things it was like, whoa, this is really mind-opening to view it this way, and really gave some real tangible tools. So it'll be really interesting to kind of discuss And for those who have read, definitely, add your insight there. And if you haven't read, that's okay. We're going to be going through a lot of the points of the book. And really, this is a book club meeting discussion, but really it's kind of going to be a workshop, because I want you to be really engaged. And I have some worksheets and some things for us to do together. You have set aside this time today to be with me, and I want to make it worth your time and for you to really discover and learn and open up your mind and have some aha moments of discovery for yourself. Okay. So, you'll notice in the chat box, I have 3 different links to 3 different worksheets. Okay, the first is a social anxiety questionnaire that we're actually going to go through together. The second is what I call the reveal worksheet, and has some space. It can be done here today or something that you can kind of take and do later. We'll spend a little bit of time kind of thinking through some of that. And then the other one I threw in there, it's called the Opinion of Yourself worksheet. And it's actually from, oh, you don't see that. Huh. So nobody's seeing those links. Interesting. Why is that?
Can you just post the link again? Okay.
It was because I hadn't started. Oh, okay. I hadn't started the meeting yet. So let me just copy and paste these again. Do you see that one now?
Yes.
Okay. Good. I'm glad you spoke up here and let me know. Okay, perfect. So those 3 worksheets, and so the Opinion of Yourself worksheet is actually from the Confident Pro Mindset course that you all have access to within the program. But it just was very applicable to what we were talking about. We're going to be talking about today. So I threw that in there as a little something extra for you. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get set up. So just out of curiosity, don't feel embarrassed if you haven't, but how many have read the book?
Yet.
Okay, so Marissa. So maybe you can kind of put a thumbs up or a raised hand or something next to your name. But okay, so we have a few. So that helps a little bit because, there's a little bit of insight. And if I don't remember things quite as well as you might, chime in and tell me. So Egil, you read it. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in here. And I may need to arrange here. I can see everything. All right, great. Okay, so the book is How to Be Yourself by Dr. Ellen Hendriksen. And it's really a book about social anxiety, social anxiety and being able to kind of overcome some of that social anxiety. So the reason that I was interested in jumping into this book is I feel like, and this is something that just kind of keeps coming up in a lot of our discussions, is that there's kind of normal social anxiety. And then there's the social anxiety that comes when you're not speaking your native language, when you're speaking English as a second language. Is that seem to be true? Is there kind of, and I'm just kind of curious, your personal experiences, is that, I'm coming from a place of just, social anxiety, not kind of a fear of speaking up has been kind of part of my story and learning how to use my voice and things like that. But that's in my native language. So I know that there's a certain element certain element that is just kind of maybe part of our makeup. And then there's an added element of speaking English that kind of makes it a little bit more complicated. What are your thoughts about this? What has been your experience? And again, this is kind of open discussion, so anyone can kind of chime in here, just unmute.
So, hello.
Hello.
So, yesterday, in fact, I have an experience. Yesterday, I had my first lunch with my team, and I feel like it's scary because, you know, it was more informal conversation, and everybody speak different things, and I just try to keep in the conversation, but I feel like insecure, or maybe the contrast with the culture, because you know, in my country we don't do the same activities or hobbies, and sometimes it's kind of difficult try to keep into the culture too, or be confident about how you can get more vocabulary or pronunciation to try to understand and the people understand you.
Yes, so there's elements of culture that come into it, and maybe not knowing exactly what everyone is talking about and referring to, that everyone kind of seems to be understanding what's going on, and maybe there's this element of like, I'm not catching everything. And that creates a little bit of insecurity. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that adds another layer to it, right? Anyone else? And I won't be calling on anyone, just kind of go ahead. I can't really see everybody's screen, you know, on there to know who wants to speak up. So go ahead.
Well,
yeah.
So, well, I can share my experience.
Okay.
And I don't really remember having much social anxiety before moving to the US. My experience is similar to that of a student of yours that you talked about, I believe, in the Confidence Pro Mindset course. And, you know, someone who was very confident in her native country because her English was better than anybody else's. And so she was proud of how good she spoke. And then she came to the US, and compared to native speakers, her English wasn't as good. And that really affected her self-confidence. And I think that something like that happened to me as well. You know, I came with the belief that my English was better than it was. Yeah, that affected me in areas beyond language. For a long time, I simply stopped talking. Yeah, which was exactly the wrong way to go about it, but that's what I did. I remember, and it was 15 years ago, but I remember thinking, I am not going to talk to anyone in public until I speak better. I know, the exact wrong way to go, but yeah, it affected my self-esteem, and I'm not sure that I've completely overcome it. I mean, I keep pushing myself to do it, but it's always there. The little butterflies in my stomach, as they say over here, they're always there. But and I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll give the floor to someone else. I recently read that the physiological responses to anxiety and excitement are exactly the same. So what's happening to our body when we are excited and we are anxious are exactly the same. And the main difference is the way we interpret it. So if we interpret it in a positive way, then we're excited. So, I mean, it's easier said than done, but if we think, oh my God, I have to give up speech and everybody's going to be there and everybody's going to hear me, I'm terrified. Versus, hey, I have this great opportunity to share my thoughts in front of all these people. And this is a great opportunity. Then it's positive.
Yes.
So it's a matter of perception.
I love that.
I haven't
Okay,
had an opportunity to test it, but anyway, I thought it was kind of a nice way to put up
I think
to go about it.
you're probably testing it and not even realizing you're testing it. Just even having that thought in your mind and going out into the world, you're probably testing it without even realizing. Okay, so that was the
yay.
Yeah. So that was the perfect introduction to what we're talking about today, because you know, this book is so interesting, and I feel like it has so many helpful tools that I had to break it up into 2 parts. So we are actually going to do a part 1 today and a part 2 in July. And the way that I have this segmented is part 1 is the internal work, and you nailed it. You just nailed it in terms of, you know, the external could, you know, you're feeling the same things, whether you're excited or you're anxious. It's just what's happening internally that we're shifting. Okay. So it's so interesting because the internal work, we'll really dive deep into the internal work today. And it's not that we have, you know, it's not that we always have to do the internal work before the external work. You know, the internal thought work before we start taking action, but there's kind of we kind of play with both in life, but one without the other doesn't really work. And we'll dive into that today. So perfect introduction. Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll jump right in. So with any of my trainings, I always start with this. True mastery is 1 part input and 3 parts output. So you're going to be learning today, but I also, which is kind of an input situation, the output is you taking action on what you're learning today. Okay, so reflect, apply, and share. Okay, that's how you create true mastery. That's how you create an experience with what you're learning, so it actually changes your brain. All right, because we have information, we're kind of information overload. We don't need more information. We need to apply the information that we're given so that it actually changes our lives. Okay. And so this is kind of the formula we teach. So I invite you to engage in what we're doing. And that's where you're going to really find the biggest benefit in being here today. Okay. So first off, I want to make sure you all know, if social anxiety, feeling nervous when you're speaking up in English is kind of something that you struggle with, you're not alone. This is something that, I have heard over and over again from my students here at Pronunciation Pro, and it's a common struggle, and you're definitely not alone in this. And I think that there's power in knowing that you're not alone. When you think that you're the only one having this challenge, I think it makes the challenge even worse. But when you know that you have a community who feels the same as you and is experiencing the same, there's a lot of support that can be had within that community. So that's what we're here today, to help you feel that support and that help, and saying, okay, we've got this. We're gonna help support you and guide you through this. And I want to just tell you how brave you are. The quality of people who come into this program and who are actively getting uncomfortable for growth is incredible to me. So who you are as a person in terms of your strength and your courage, I know the quality of person you are because you're here. You're taking action to improve and grow and stretch, and it's uncomfortable, and you're here anyway. And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing. And I'm just so proud of you for being here. Okay. So what we're kind of doing here is we're kind of taking, here's the thought that I have when we're doing internal work. I kind of think of our mind and our thoughts as just a super messy closet that just needs to be organized. Okay. And really, there's sometimes a lot of embarrassment and shame in the messy closet. You're like, ooh, I don't want anybody to see that. Let's close those doors. Let's close those doors. Nobody needs to see what's going on in my mind, right? And let's just pretend it's not there. But there's no growth in that. There's no growth. There's no freedom in just hiding. Okay, what we want to do is open that closet and say, yep, it's messy. All of us have messy closets, and it's just a matter of taking things out and starting to organize. Okay. And that's what we're going to do. And who doesn't want a nice organized closet like that? You know, wouldn't it be wonderful if our minds could just feel as organized as this beautiful closet here? And I do feel like it's possible. I feel like anxiety, when we talk about anxiety, it's just this mesh of all these different emotions, just kind of a hairball of emotions that kind of keeps us stunted, and it stops us from moving forward. But when we can take the time and energy to kind of untangle all of that and organize it and get clarity in what's going on in our minds, that's when there's so much freedom and so much happens in that space, and you can do more and be more than you ever thought possible. And that's the exciting part when I really dive into mindfulness and thought work and internal work and pushing up against that comfort zone, kind of stepping outside of that comfort zone. That's where the magic happens. And that's what I get super excited about, that space. But really we have to get clear that, yeah, it's messy and we're all messy, and that's okay. That's our humanity. And you just got to embrace it and love it. Okay. So yeah, I've already talked a little bit about this internal work and external work. And there's kind of this jump between the two, because the internal work, you can't just sit and work on the internal without doing the external. You can't be like, okay, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be strong. I'm confident. I'm great. And just sit there at your home without stepping out and experiencing, and speaking up and sharing and doing. Okay. You can't, there's no growth in just the one or the other. The other thing that I've found too is doing the external, going and giving the speeches or doing the things without working on the internal also doesn't work so well, because it's just what I call white knuckling it. It's just grin and bear it. Okay. There's not this, I hear someone chuckling, but I obviously can relate. Can you relate? What are you feeling when you think of kind of this juggle between the internal, kind of what's happening in your mind, and then how you're going out and showing up in the world? What has been your experience? Does anybody have anything to share?
There is a saying that, like, after you come from retreats or some kind of meditation things, if you want to see how enlightened you are, you need to go back to your family.
Yes.
So,
See how it actually applies. It actually works. That's like those weight loss shows. Those weight loss shows where they go to the camp and they're doing all the exercise and they have all their meals planned and stuff. And then they drop them back in their home and they're like, all right, start using the skills, in real life. That's when it really gets real. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about social awareness versus social anxiety. Okay. So, does anybody kind of want to dive into this of what they feel like is the difference here and how these two kind of work together? Yeah, go ahead. Anybody have thoughts on that?
Maybe I think social anxiety, the Dr. Hansen says that it's a little bit different between awareness and anxiety. So if you can, awareness is it's a different kind of feelings, different kind of reactions. You can be one thing if you can have. It's a bit, but I don't remember. I remember that to talk about shy and introversion. That is so different things. But she thinks about that, because I'm reading, but I'm doing resume from the book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So so social awareness. So the way that I think this can be explained a little bit, I think of my kids. So I have a 12-year-old son, and he's reaching that age where he's becoming socially aware. He actually is like paying attention to what he's wearing and wearing deodorant. And, you know, he's watching other friends and things and thinking, okay, you know, I want to develop talents and skills kind of like what they're doing. You know, he saw a friend that was learning to play the guitar or knew how to play the guitar. And he was like, oh, I want to learn how to play the guitar. You know, I think that's kind of cool. And, you know, let's go ahead and jump into that. So there's this social awakening or awareness that's happening for him that is really interesting to discover, because I have another son that's just turned 11 and not a lot of social awareness, you know, doesn't really see why he needs to shower every day, why he needs to, you know, he's not as socially aware. He hasn't kind of reached that point where he has that awareness. Okay. But then I have also my 7-year-old son who has been socially aware from a very young age. You know, he wouldn't speak up because he was afraid people would laugh at him. And he kind of had a little bit of that reservation, and we've had to talk through that a little bit to help him, you know, speak up and share his thoughts and ideas. And he's gotten better at that, but that social awareness came at a very early age. Social awareness is a good thing. If we didn't have social awareness, we'd be a psychopath. You know, like if there's no awareness whatsoever, we don't care at all what other people think. That's kind of a scary end of the spectrum to be in. And not a very, very relatable person. Okay. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have social anxiety, where it stops us. It keeps us from doing anything because we're so worried about what other people think of us and how they're viewing us. Okay. So does that make sense a little bit? So we have to be conscious of the fact that social awareness is important. We want to have social awareness. But when it starts going towards social anxiety, that's when we kind of get tripped up. That's when it's stopping us from being our best self. Okay, so that's the place that we want to get, is in this area of social awareness, and be able to have tools and understanding and recognition of how to move away from that, that debilitating social anxiety.
The author said that the social anxiety it's like the people who has afraid to be judged by
yeah, absolutely. It's rooted in a fear of being known. Okay, it's a fear of people really knowing us completely, and we're going to get into that reveal, because that part blew my mind. I don't know if Egil, you're did you kind of have the same response or what when we were talking about the reveal?
All this book blew my mind, but yeah, about reveal, that I'm afraid that they will know about me something, but this is not the truth, but it's not me that I'm afraid of. I don't know how to say.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
I'm creating false image about myself, and I'm afraid that they will see this false image of me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll jump into that. For those who haven't read it yet, we'll kind of jump into that. But first, let's get some awareness, okay? And let's really dive in and see what we can discover here. So I have this social anxiety questionnaire. I have the link to this worksheet, and I apologize, the numbers on the worksheet, I could not get those numbers to line up. And my brain and the way my brain works, that bothered me so much, but we're working on just putting it out there before things are perfect. So, so with the social anxiety questionnaire, what I want you to do is kind of we'll go through each of these questions, and there are 25 of them. So we'll go through these questions, and if you have a piece of paper or something handy, go ahead and get that out. I want you to give yourself 1 point if the answer is yes in your native language, and then kind of have another row of yes if it's while speaking English. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
for example, I get nervous if I have to speak with someone who, let's see, I'm gonna have to move this over a little bit so I can see. So I get nervous if I have to speak with someone in authority. Okay, so I want you to think in your native language, is that true? Yes or no? And then while speaking English, because I think that will be insightful for you to have an understanding of, is this something that I kind of carry with me anyways? Or is this something that's coming because of speaking English as a second language? So I think that contrast will be insightful for you. Okay, so just kind of add a point if it's yes, 0 if it's no. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
All right. So I get nervous if I have to speak with someone in authority. I have difficulty making eye contact with others. I become tense if I have to talk about myself or my feelings. I find it difficult to mix comfortably with the people I work with. I feel tense if I am alone with just one other person. Okay. I worry about expressing myself in case I appear awkward. I get anxious returning an item to a store. I find it difficult to disagree with someone else's point of view. I find myself worrying that I won't know what to say in social situations. I am nervous mixing with people I don't know well.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We're going through a questionnaire just to kind of get an idea of where we are, how much social anxiety you're experiencing in your life. So just jump in. We're doing, a point if the answer is yes, a 0, 1 if the answer is yes, 0 if it's no.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, I feel I'll say something embarrassing when talking. When in a group, I find myself worrying I will be ignored. I am unsure whether to greet someone I know, but don't know them very well. I feel uncomfortable making a phone call when others can hear me. I feel awkward or anxious eating or drinking in public places. I feel anxious acting, performing, or giving a talk in front of an audience. I feel uncomfortable working, writing, or calculating while others watch me. I get anxious calling, emailing, or texting someone I don't know very well. I have difficulty speaking in class or at a meeting. I feel anxious using a public bathroom. She calls this shy bladder. I have difficulty talking to people I find attractive. I feel anxious taking a test or exam, like this one. I get stressed and anxious when hosting a party or event. I find it difficult to resist a salesperson or solicitor. And last, I dislike being the center of attention. Okay, so I'm going to bring it into kind of discussion mode here, because hopefully as you kind of went through that, you kind of got introspective, really went internal and really kind of started digging around and saying, what's going on here? You know, what is this? And I want to kind of hear what you feel like you discovered through this process. So, you know, it could be that you maybe said yes to more things than you thought you would, or maybe you said no to more things than you thought you would. I'm also curious about your journey. So maybe it used to be that you had problems with a lot of these things, and now you don't as much. Like, you know, at the beginning, we were hearing from someone that, you know, said 15 years ago, I wouldn't speak up ever, you know, and I've come a long way since. And so, you know, you might have gone through this journey of overcoming a lot of this anxiety. And it could be, this could be a moment of patting yourself on the back and being like, all right, I'm actually doing a lot better now than I have before. Or it could be like, oh no, I'm in the thick of it. You know, I'm in this really heavy place where I feel like I just cannot speak up without being seized on by these feelings, having this feeling of anxiety. So what was the discovery here? Talk to me about what you kind of learned about yourself through this process.
I think I have social anxiety, but I'm trying to overcome the fear or to speak English, to speak with another different persons, and so even I used to be very shy. I have no matter to work in the work to my work and my job. It's excellent, but socially I'm so shy. Even as I was in a party, I stay in the coach. I stay alone. I don't want very much very much people around me at home. So I have but I trying to overcome my social anxiety, and now it's for me today it's a very challenging to speaking here with you, and so I'm trying.
Well, I'm proud of you. Yeah, you're taking steps forward. I'm so proud of you, Cassia. That's great. What else? Who else?
I'm reading the book. I didn't finish yet, but I'm reading the book.
Yeah, lots of good tools here. So that'll be great. And the discovery as you read, I think that's the great part of some of these books, is you discover more and more as you read and you think and reflect and apply some of the things. So who else is kind of tell me what you've discovered through this?
When I went through this,
Go ahead, because I spoke already.
Go ahead, Minling, and then Marissa.
When I went through these questions, I found out that I really have no problem is if I let me say, I'm in discussion or whatever I'm doing, if I do it in, let me say, Chinese or German, I do not have any problem. Only if I also with another people, let me say, in Europe or so, except Britain or the native speaker in USA. Only when I must speak English with native speaker, I have this problem. Otherwise, no. So when I have meeting and let me say, with anybody in Europe, I could concentrate on the topic I want to talk about, because I know that they are not a native speaker, and I will concentrate on what I want to say. But in front of American or Britain, I will concentrate on grammar or what I'm talking about, not the topic I want to talk. So this is, I found out from these questions that the only problem is the language itself.
Well, that's a great discovery, because when you can kind of recognize, oh, it's just in English, what is happening to my brain when I'm speaking English?
I'm not confident enough.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because as we go through, it'll be interesting to keep kind of searching and saying, what is it about me speaking English that I'm struggling about that I don't struggle here? So you can kind of, borrow some of these thoughts in the way that you're showing up in these while speaking Chinese and German, and apply it while you're speaking English. So it'll be interesting as we go along in this discussion what you discover more and more. So thank you.
I don't know if I can just apply. How can I do it?
I know, and it's a process. It's absolutely a process, but we're going to start untangling. We're going to start kind of learning the skills and understanding the skills and starting to figure out what do you need. The Confident Pro Mindset course is a great strategy too of the how do we make this happen too. So, all right, Marissa, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my experience is very, very similar to what Min Ling just said. I've noticed that the questions to which I answered, yes, that makes me anxious, were only the ones that had to do with speaking. Okay, all other situations that were more about interacting but not necessarily speaking, they didn't seem to be a problem. So it is primarily the language. On the positive side, based on this questionnaire, I am less socially anxious than I thought. Most of those questions said, no, not really, I can handle that. So yeah, good. But the ones that make me nervous, they always have to do with speaking. So that's really what I have to, what I have to focus on. And Min Ling said something that it really resonated with me, which is having to focus so much on the way I speak that I sometimes pay less attention to the content, or situations where if I'm focusing on the content, my pronunciation suffers. It's almost as if I produce a hierarchy of tasks associated with communicating. And when I'm talking about something where the content is more challenging, I forget to pay attention to the way I'm sounding. So anyway, I guess practice.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful insight, just to even the awareness, because the first step to change is awareness. If you don't know that there's a problem, there's no way to change it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is bringing up some concepts and ideas to bring awareness, because you all have what it takes to make the changes. I mean, I'll give you tools and stuff, but you haven't the power inside of you to make these changes and do, and grow and develop and improve. You're going to know way better than I am what you're going to need. Okay. So what we're doing here is just giving you a platform, bringing awareness, bringing tools, and then you get to take them and say, okay, what am I going to do with this? And that's where the real power is in you. So all of you are going to do great things, just even starting with that awareness and starting to move forward with what to do beyond that awareness. Okay, wonderful. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Go
As
ahead.
I went through the questions, I was asking myself, will I feel nervous if it was my first language or if it was in my second language, English? So I came to the conclusion, it's the same. If I answered true to any one of those questions, it was likely to be the same in my first language as well. For example, there was one question that said, do you get nervous when you speak in front of an audience or in front of people? And so if I was speaking in my first language, I would still be nervous. If I was speaking in English, I would still feel nervous as well. And so, and one of the differences was like for one of the questions was like, how do you feel when you talk about yourself, right? For me, I become tense, right? If I have to talk about my feelings, right? Because sometimes we are expected as, I don't know about females, but as men, sometimes we're expected, it's changing now, but we're expected to be like, carry our emotions, to be strong for people, right? So if you have someone, especially male, who shows emotion, it can be looked down upon. And I'm not saying this every single time, but it used to be that way, right? But it's changing a bit,
It's part
right?
of, yeah, absolutely. And you're picking up on these kind of social, societal norms, I guess, that are going around. But what's interesting is that, and I come back to this all the time, is that practice. I mean, so much of what we're talking about is how much practice you get with something, that's how comfortable you become. So if it's something that you're feeling like, oh, this is uncomfortable, and I'm not comfortable speaking in front of people or sharing my feelings or things like that, to me, it's not a run away. Oh, I'm uncomfortable, run away. It's I'm uncomfortable. I need more practice. I need more practice with this. Okay. And there's a mindset shift that it really, that I think is an important one for us, is that fear, that anxiety, like we were saying earlier, could be just excitement. We could interpret it as excitement of like, ooh, I need to move into that, because that's where growth happens. That's the growth part of life, is when you feel uncomfortable, let's step into that.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go, Arjan.
One sec. Yeah. So for me, I think, kind of like you said, anything you do for the first time, you are gonna get nervous. You are gonna have some anxiety, because it's outside of your comfort zone and you never done it. And so for me, what had helped me, in my opinion, is just intentional practice helps you get better. The reason why being is because the more you do it, I think the more you become better at it. And because of that, I have overcome a lot of things by just doing the work, or just doing or taking action. You know what I mean? And so, because to be honest with you, some of those questions, like that you ask, or what you put here, I used to struggle with those. And so, not to be bragging, but at the same time, I think at the end of when you just overcome a lot of things and practice and just do what it takes to actually just see yourself as better. It's in my opinion, it's the most fulfilling you can ever have, when you overcome your anxiety, or what you're scared of. Kind of like what Marissa is saying, it's all about your perspective about yourself. It's how you see yourself, your self-image towards what you see yourself. And so, but I always say this, nobody can do your push-up for you, so you have to take your action. And
Exactly.
so, the only way you're gonna get better is you gotta take some action to where you can get better. Not you're not. I'm not saying you're not gonna mess up, but to those messed up, you're gonna learn things that you do not need to learn, or you do not need to take action with, and then you can dial back and be like, okay, what do I need to change or what do I need to improve so that way I can get better. So hope that helped.
Yeah, so great. And I do think that we need to celebrate wins, because if there's growth, we want to celebrate that growth. We need to be able to share not only our growth, our challenges, but the growth that's there as well. So
can I add a quick little comment? Because you were talking about the comfort zone, and I don't know whether you guys can see this.
Here, let me. Well, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Right. So I have this calendar with an inspirational thought for each day of the year, and because I need all the help I can get, and so one of the first things I do in the morning is I turn the page, and I read the inspirational thought, and Today's inspirational thought is just that: life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So
there you go.
In a perfect thought for today's discussion.
Universe is sending us all a message right there. That's great. Good. Yes. Yeah. And that's absolutely true. Like that's how growth happens, is in the doing, and which I love that was a great introduction to this avoiding versus enduring that they talk about in the book. Okay. So here's the graph that they had in the book. So avoiding is you're coming along and you're like, oh my gosh, here's an interaction that I need to do, have with someone. I'm about to go into a meeting. I have a thought of something I'd like to share, or I'm in a meeting. I have a thought about something I'd like to share with the group. And you go from, you have the thought, ooh, I should share this. Woo, freak out. Okay. Your heart starts jumping. You start getting super nervous about the idea of speaking up. Okay. I see a lot of head shaking, so I'm not the only one. Here we go. So you do it, you out, and then you're like, oh no, never mind. I'm not going to say anything. And this is the pattern of avoid. It's like, okay, never mind. I'm not going to speak up. I'm not going to share my brilliant idea. It could totally change and blow everybody's mind. But instead, I'm going to stop and I'm going to not speak up. And I go back into that zone of being comfortable again. Okay. So that discomfort, woo, I don't want to be there. Going back to comfort. Okay. Here is the alternative. Okay. We have that freak out, and instead of avoiding and running away, we think, nope, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to stick with this idea. And what happens is, you share your idea, and there's a little bit of a lingering of that, share your idea, kind of, you move along with the meeting, and you're still left with this feeling of like, and it kind of lingers with you for a little while, and then it eventually drops off. Can you relate to this? Okay, so this is
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say I do have a perfect example of this. I think you know this. Maybe some of you guys know of him. His name is Simon Sinek, or Sinek. He actually have a book that Annie did, a book club. He started with Why, but he actually told the story about on an interview that he had about when he was one time he was in a meeting, and he didn't really have the background of the person who's presenting something about business, and he mentioned this. It's like it's okay to be the person who's stupid. It's not stupid, but like I'm gonna get at this. He said it's okay to be the person who doesn't know anything. So what he did is, because there's multiple people on that meeting, and so but nobody had the courage to actually speak up. And because of that, this guy was presenting, he was going fast, and what Simon Sinek did, he just continued to ask the question, hey, can you explain more about this? Can you explain more about this? And then what he did is it triggered for the whole team to actually say, hey, I actually agree with him and say, can you explain more about that? But he said in that interview that he said, if I didn't say anything about it, I don't think the whole team would have said something about it. So sometimes what I'm getting at is sometimes actually sometimes you need to be the person that should be brave to break the barrier, so that way everybody can have an idea or a perspective or confusion. And so when you were just saying that, Annie, I was like, oftentimes, I think we avoid like I said, the comfort or the outside of our comfort zone because we just don't want to get embarrassed. But when you just speak up, I think it does. They said there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's just learning, and so having that formula that being brave, and then just once you add it, like I'm doing right now, you don't really think about you're nervous or anything, but it's sometimes you just take for you to speak up for everyone to speak up. So.
And even speaking up to say, can you explain a little bit more? I'm not fully understanding, and that takes a ton of courage. But even like you were saying with that story, someone saying, I'm not understanding, can you explain a little bit more? Actually opened it up to like, oh, everyone, others were struggling to understand, but weren't brave enough to ask either.
Oh, another thing is, what's your definition of brave? Because I have a definition of my own version, because sometimes people think that, you have to be brave. Being brave doesn't mean you're afraid. So for me, my definition of being brave is you are afraid, but you just do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. So I don't know if what's your definition of being brave, because some people are like, oh, why are you so brave? I'm like, or they equate it as you being not scared. Well, it's not really the case for me. I'm still scared. I just do it anyway because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, bravery is not bravery without fear. I don't think you can be brave without there being fear present, because if there's no fear present, it's not being brave. It's just doing, it's doing something that's comfortable for you. Right. And so that's not being brave. The bravery comes because you're doing it when there's fear, even though there's fear. And I think that's something we have to really recognize and kind of alter if that's not an understanding you have already, is fear doesn't mean something's gone wrong all the time. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is. But fear in our modern age usually it's our primitive brain trying to keep us safe, but in an ineffective way. It's not doing it in a very effective way. So this third graph is kind of something that you guys you've touched on already, is the first try, is going to be that high freak out and slow return back to normal. But then with repetition, what tends to happen is it becomes less and less so. Okay, this is that pattern of repetition and practice. Okay, if there's fear, if there's anxiety, if there's worry and stress with it, it really just means we need more practice. Okay, any thoughts on that?
May I share?
Yeah, Nana, I saw you kind of like, I'm ready to share something. Okay, go ahead.
Well, after reading the half of the book, I've decided that I've understood that I have this anxiety, feeling of anxiety. And well, I decided that to getting rid of it is the way to feel confident and to feel more relaxed and to enjoy the moment. So I've decided to start blogging and start it having these 15 seconds of stories, talking stories in English.
Excellent.
And the first try was like higher than this on the table.
The freak out was.
yeah. It was like, oh no, a lot of trials and it was really hard. But the second try was also freaking out, but it was less. The third try less, and well, every time I always feel anxious and I feel this fear a little bit, but it helps me to get rid of the thought what people will think about me later, because it's just for me. I do it for me. I do it for getting rid of my fears and just to practice more and feel comfortable with myself, with how I sound. So it was a crazy idea.
Yeah, no, that's a great example.
Yeah, I started it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, whatever it is, it's going to be different for each person. So you have to identify, what is it that freaks me out? You know, what is it that really gets my heart jumping? And then it's like, okay, well, then I need to come up with a plan. You know, if that's something I want to step into or get better at, what plan do I have to get the repetition I need so that I can build the confidence necessary in that space? Okay.
Yeah.
So like, I like how you said that confidence is going to come, you know, comes with that repetition and just the doing.
I like the idea that the first has to be motion, and it's like a step in your uncomfortable zone, but later it becomes your comfortable zone. And fake it till you make it plan is the best plan, just for gaining something, and especially when you have a goal and you want to reach it, and it's like the tool for me.
Yeah,
it still
absolutely.
is a tool.
The quote that I love on this, and I forget who says it, well, we can Google it, but that which we persist in doing becomes easier, not because of the nature of the thing has changed, but our ability to do it has increased. Okay, so it's that.
Yeah, exactly. Even now, I just started to speak, and it is late here in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I feel sleepy, and my muscles here, they just sleep.
Yes.
And at first, the first feeling was like freaking out, because I couldn't cope with all the stuff here. But while speaking, I just tried to move on and do the motion, and now I feel better.
Yes, absolutely. Good. I love it. It's in the doing that we're going to really feel that movement and that progress. Excellent. Okay, so let's get on to the reveal. So this is an interesting part of the book. And actually, I started reading the book a couple of months ago, or I don't know, a month and a half ago or so. And I read through the reveal, and then I just kind of stopped and thought through that, because it really did, it did hit me hard. So she says that the core of social anxiety is this idea of the reveal, okay? So it's the sense that something embarrassing, deficient, here, hold on, I gotta move something. Let's see, sorry. The sense that something embarrassing, deficient, or flawed about us will become obvious to everyone. Okay, so it really, this is what kind of blew my mind, because there was so, you know, I've known this where it's like, oh, you really need to kind of love yourself and come to a place of acceptance and love and compassion for yourself if you are to not care so much about how others perceive you. You know, I've understood that, but this idea of the anxiety comes because there's something embarrassing, deficient, or flawed about us will become obvious to everyone. Things that we think are embarrassing, deficient, or flawed. Okay, so it's just about our perception, not necessarily what is or factual, because very rarely is it facts. It's really just your self-perception. Okay, and then social anxiety isn't just fear of judgment, it's fear the judges are right. Okay, I just want us to sit on that for a second, because it really does then emphasize the importance of how do you feel about yourself? You know, and I talk about in the Pro Mindset course, the way you think others are judging you is the way you are judging yourself. Okay. because when you come from a place of love and compassion and kindness to yourself, that judgment from others is either not going to be as significant, or you can look at it in more of like a, is there any truth to what they're saying? Okay, well, maybe I need to take a look, instead of it being so damaging to ourselves. Okay, so Dr. Ellen Hendriksen says, we think there is something wrong with us and we avoid in order to conceal it. In our minds, if the reveal comes to pass, we'll be rejected, humiliated, or exposed. So what I loved about this, and that it was like, oh, okay, if I am to overcome social anxiety, I have to get to the root of what I'm afraid will be revealed. Like, what is it I'm about, thoughts that I have about myself that I am afraid others will see. Okay. And that's where, this reveal comes in. And it was interesting because I read that part about the reveal and I was like, okay, what is it about? What are the things that I just don't, I had to get real honest with myself. Like, what is it? What are the thoughts I have about myself that I don't want others to know, or I feel like I need to hide in some way? And so I started listing it. Okay. I started kind of putting it out on paper. And that's why I put on the worksheets, the reveal worksheet, is because when we start that process of actually writing it out, seeing on a paper, it takes the weight of those things off. It's almost like the reveal to ourselves as well. Is like, okay, here are the things that I feel like I some kind of had to hide about myself. But when I see them on paper, well, that's not that big a deal. Why would I be worried that someone would know that about me? There was just a lot of that aha for me. What is this for curious? Any thoughts here? Here, let me pull up the chat box in this case.
I would like to share something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my experience a few months ago was I feel a social anxiety for just to go outside of the street. So the thing that I was thinking that was the people is going to think too much about myself, because I am living in a different culture. Maybe I'm so different from the other people. So, but then I listened one podcast that say, you are afraid, if you feel afraid that how people are thinking about your aspect, you need to think that they are more afraid about the same. I mean, in the street, when you are front to front or face to face with other people, probably they are thinking the same thing that you. Oh, what are thinking about me? Or I am speaking good, I am speaking bad. So that helped me a lot to improve and see another person and say, and it is too related about the last thing that you say, that you must be more, I don't know, lovely yourself, and then you are going to be able to do the same for the other person. So that was a good exercise to me. I'm still working on that to try to say, okay, they are worried about their aspect, so I'm good. They are thinking of him, I am thinking of me. So,
yeah, they're more worried about them. Yeah, that's such a good point, is that we think everyone's kind of seeing us or judging us, and really they're probably doing the same for themselves to themselves. So that's such a great point. And such a good mindset shift that kind of helps you then step into that more of that courage to step out and do more. and be more. That's great. So the reveal, what are you afraid of? So here are some of the areas that she talks about in the book. She says, you know, it could be our anxiety. We don't want others to see our physical signs of anxiety. We're worried about sweating, blushing, you know, stumbling over words, losing words. We're afraid people will notice those things. Maybe our appearance. We feel like there's something shameful about the way we look. It could be our character. We have the belief that we are fundamentally deficient or lacking in some way. We think to ourselves, what's wrong with me? Our social skills, and, you know, she describes social skills. I was like, ooh, this kind of sounds like, you know, just speaking. You know, it applies very much to just communication skills. It's just our ability to communicate. So these are kind of some of those areas that we could feel like, oh no, if someone knew this, then I'll feel embarrassed or feel judged. Okay, so that worksheet there is, you know, is incredibly important. And I think that just writing things out and being really honest with yourself, you know, a lot of times we don't want to share that with anybody else because you're like, this is my deepest, darkest, you know, what I feel, I'm afraid people will know about me. But writing it out, it's interesting how it takes the weight off of that. And you are able to see it from an outside perspective instead of it just rolling around in our brains. We see it, and then we can start dissecting it and saying, oh, is that really that big of a deal? And she even says, whatever your fear, it boils down to one thing: I'm not good enough. And furthermore, everyone will see. Okay. I think there's some profound message there. You know, that's a profound message, is when we really gnaw on that a little bit. Now I want to get into kind of the strategies of reframing here in this, you know, in this book club, so that we can kind of do something about it. Because I don't want to just leave you with, okay, here's, you know, yes, I do have social anxiety, but I do want to leave you with, okay, then what do we do about it? What's the internal work? So getting aware of it, and then we've got to use some strategies. So the thought, I'm not good enough at speaking, can be reframed to, I've learned so much and I'm continuing to learn and improve every day. So if we're breaking it down to just speaking English, okay, if the reveal is I'm not good enough in English, or my communication skills are not good enough to speak up, how do we reframe those things? Oh, and here, let me just kind of use this as an example. So she uses this as a framework in the book, and I think it's pretty helpful. So she says, fill in the blank when a social situation where I feel anxious. So when this happens, and this is all on that worksheet as well, on page 2 of that worksheet, I have a few blank spots for you. So when this social situation happens, so you're like, I speak up in a meeting, okay? When this social situation happens, it will become obvious that I am, what is the fear? What does that inner critic say is wrong with me in those moments? Okay. And I understand some people have to leave and things and had to check out, but let me give some examples of things that I've heard my students over the years. It says, when I speak English with a foreign accent, it will become obvious that I do not belong here. Okay, so that's the inner critic says that something was wrong, you know. When I speak English, it will become obvious that I'm not good enough at speaking English. Okay, what is it that's kind of, and maybe you don't want to share or feel like you want to share that, but maybe it's too personal at this point, because I know that there comes a lot of internal work that has to, and feelings that have to be processed when we kind of dive deep into there. But Does anybody have anything they want to kind of share that comes up for them?
Yeah. When I speak in English, I feel anxious because I think I'm afraid that the people don't understand me well, what I'm saying. And so I'm feel very anxious, and so it's bad, and so I can't speak well. It's like something I forgot. I forgot about the words, I forgot about everything, and so I say that so it's wrong. And so before I saw because I'm so exciting and so anxiety, and I can't do the thing. It's like to drive a car. When I drive a car myself, I think I drive better car when I drive someone else. For example, a man. So you don't. Yeah, I'm afraid to do the judgment. You're a woman. You don't know how to drive a car. And when I speak with someone who knows me, English is, for example, a friend, it's hoarse because I'm afraid to make a mistake. Now I'm learning. I'm trying to understand that I have to make a mistake. Make the mistakes. It's really good for you correct them and to speak better. But I'm little taken to make a mistake. I'm never afraid.
Yes, those mistakes is important. And that fear of judgment is real. You know, that fear of judgment, you know, that you feel like others are going to judge you, or there's something that, you know, that's an uncomfortable feeling to kind of step into. And so, you know, definitely getting aware of that, of like, I fear of judgment. Why am I fearing that they're going to judge me? What is it that I'm afraid that they're, you know, afraid about in that situation? So we're going to kind of dive into a few tools and strategies here, but in thinking about this, I just thought, you know, the work is in shifting our thoughts and beliefs so we can come to a place of love and acceptance of ourselves. When we love ourselves, we don't care so much about what others think because we know we are amazing and worthy. In this space of self-acceptance, we step into our greatest confidence. So let's really talk about, you know, replace and embrace is what she calls it. So when we get into this place of, okay, you know, I've identified what the reveal is. What is it that I'm really afraid people will know about me? There's 3 questions that she says to kind of ask in that space. How bad would that really be if they knew that about me? And what this does, it decasts. Okay, this one was a hard one for even me to pronounce. And so that's why I put it out in rune phonetics here. Decatastrophizing. Okay, decatastrophizing. Okay, it's bursting the bubble of the worst case scenario. So a lot of times our brain goes into worst case scenario and we're like, oh, I'll lose my job, everyone will laugh, and I will be shunned forever. You know, we kind of go to this worst case scenario, or we don't even think about why we're so scared of it. We just know that, oh, it would be terrible. So you have to ask yourself, how bad would that really be if they, you know, they discovered this about me? Okay. Really questioning the thoughts and beliefs we have about ourselves is really the first step. So as you do the reveal, just being able to question that and say, am I really not good enough in English? Or do I just have a really high standard for myself? And I feel like I should be here, you know, at the same level of native speakers. And instead I'm judging myself because I'm not at the same communication skills level as native speakers. Ming Ling is shaking her head. Okay. So that's a good one to recognize, is that you're comparing apples to oranges. To compare yourself to a native speaker is really unfair. You know, it's really unfair because you talk about the repetition and the practice that it takes to really be native. I mean, let's just not even go there, because man, that's a really difficult standard to live by. Did you have some thoughts, Minling?
This is the advantage that I never will reach or overcome. It's not possible. This advantage will stay there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So reframing it in terms of like, hey, there's no comparison between me and a native speaker. I recognize that. I wasn't born speaking English. You know, they have so many years on me and experiences on me that I'm never going to really be able to like catch up there to that level. However, if it's a race of me against me, you know, if my mindset and my goal is just to be better than I was before, how much more confidence does that bring? If you look back 5, 10 years, however long you've been speaking, and be like, whoa, look where I was before, and now look where I am now. Incredible. Look at me. There's a ton of confidence there just to be like, I have overcome some tremendous obstacles to get to where I am now that these native speakers never had to do. Okay. So if you want to compare that way, I'm all for that, right? If you want to compare that way, that's great. That's fine. But you against you, have you been growing? Have you been progressing? Have you been, developing? Yes, then great job. Keep going. Okay. That comes from a place of love instead of I can't catch up to like, oh, I'm amazing. I'm just going to keep running harder and faster because I can, because I'm strong and I'm capable. Okay. All right. So how bad would it really be? These are the questions. What are the odds that this terrible thing is going to happen? Whatever it is that you're fearing, what are the odds that that's really going to happen? How could I cope? Now, I think that this is one of the greatest strategies that she talks about is how would I cope? So say something terrible happens. So I say something wrong. People don't understand me. I'm asked to repeat myself and it's really awkward and uncomfortable. Okay. So say that thing happens. How do you cope in those situations? I think the stronger we become in our coping skills and how we do that and what happens in our brain, if we ruminate about that for days and weeks and years on end, then yes, that is a terrible thing. I wouldn't want to do that either. I wouldn't want to put myself in that situation either. But when we have skills to cope with an embarrassing situation or a mistake or, something like that, then we know, oh, that's gonna be really embarrassing for a minute or a little bit. And then I'm going to use these tools and resources. I'm going to talk to a friend and we're going to be able to laugh about it. Or I'm going to go to a friend or family member and I'm going to be sad for a minute and then, or for a little bit, and then I can process those emotions and then I'm going to be fine. Your faith, your mojo, this is what she says in the class, your inner strength, your faith, your mojo, a coupon for a free yoga class, however it is that you are going to take action, something devastating happens. What are you going to do at that point? How do you cope with those situations? And the stronger your coping mechanisms, the stronger those resources are and those skills are for coping with it, the more you'll be able to confidently step into those situations and know you're going to be okay. Okay. Does that make sense? How's that feeling for you guys? Do you feel like you have some of those coping? Has that been part of your strategy as you've been learning and improving and growing? Or maybe, yeah, what are some of your coping strategies is a better question.
Meditation.
Meditation.
Yes.
Yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. It's interesting. We've been talking about that edge of comfort. I was doing yoga practice this morning and the whole mindset or the yoga practice was all about finding the edge of that discomfort and, getting comfortable in that place of discomfort. So it's all circling back over and over again today for me too.
I just have fun fact about yoga.
Yeah.
So I started teaching yoga in English about a year ago, and I was
Mhm.
super afraid, super anxious. It was like the scariest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I would start all my classes by making everybody scream, and we would all scream together. And we would do like loud exhalations, scream super loud, and then scream a little bit more quiet. And after like a couple minutes of the screaming, I would just release all my anxiety, and then I would start talking.
I love that so much. See, that is a wonderful coping. You recognize it's inside of you, and you recognize it needs to get, it's an energy, right? It's an energy that needs to get out. It needs to be released somehow. So you found a coping mechanism to release it. That's fantastic. I love that example. All right, good. So in the book, she talks about the example of going to your child is learning swim lessons, and they go to this pool, and you walk in, and there's one coach there teaching a little child to swim, and the coach is like, "What are you thinking? Why are you not doing this right? I can't believe you're so terrible at this at swimming. Why can't you just get it right? I've been teaching over and over again, but you're not doing it right." Just really badgering this person. Okay. I don't know if this is a real thing. I doubt it. And then she says, example of, then there's this other coach further down in the pool coaching another student is like, "You got this. You're doing so great. Look at the way that you're, kicking your legs. Oh, here, you're doing great, but I need your legs a little bit straighter. Here, let's get, your legs a little bit straighter. And, oh, I'm so proud of you for doing this. It takes a lot of courage," and just really building that student up. Okay. So she compares this to, ourselves and the way that our inner critic, really. And what she says is that, a lot of times what we do internally is we berate ourselves. We keep, "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing this right? I can't believe you made that mistake. What's happening? What's wrong with you?" Kind of that inner critic that tends to really, really go at us. Versus if we talk to ourselves with love and kindness and compassion, and it's like, "Oh, you made a mistake. That's okay. You're good. You're strong. You're capable. You're going to get it next time. Or you're going to keep practicing until you get it right." Okay. It's obvious externally what the best strategy is, right? That first child is going to go home, throw away their goggles, and say, "I'm done with swimming. I don't want to do this anymore." Okay. And the second child is going to be like, "I'm amazing. Swimming's the greatest." "I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep working." So if that inner critic inside of you with your communication skills is saying, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you speak like a native? Why haven't you learned this yet? Why do you keep making mistakes?" That is no place. You're going to throw out English and say, "No way. This isn't worth it. I'm not going to do this anymore." Or you're going to keep doing it and just grin and bear it, and it's going to be miserable. But when we can come to a place within ourselves where we say, "Oh, you're doing great. You know what? You are stronger now than you were before. You are better now than you were before. And you're going to keep growing and keep improving, and you are doing a great job. And I'm so proud of you." Okay. When we're coming from that place of love, the motivation is love. It's not fear. It's not running away from something. The motivation is kindness, is goodness. So he talks about self-compassion, this embrace. Okay, what do? We embrace and we replace. So self-compassion is the opposite of self-judgment. Give yourself the same support, warmth, and kindness you would get from a good friend or offer a good friend. Okay. Create a kind, encouraging environment from which you can gather the courage to choose wisely. Okay. Look for what is human and self-compassion looks for what is human and meets it with understanding, graciousness, appreciation, and encouragement. So again, having self-compassion, if that inner critic is strong within you, being able to replace that with self-compassion is going to take practice. It's going to take mindfulness. It's going to be, you know, getting aware of that inner critic and saying, nope, not today. Not going to have it. I'm going to replace that, and I'm going to practice compassion and kindness. You know, and mindfulness, she talks about mindfulness as embrace. So mindfulness is getting aware of our thoughts. It's not our actual thoughts or experience. It's a method of watching our thoughts and experiences. Okay, so it's kind of taking an outside perspective and saying, what is going on in that head? It's kind of like our messy closet. Instead of being inside the closet, it's sitting outside the closet and being like, what is happening here? You know, let's get curious here and understand what. So it shifts us. I'm not good enough to I hold the belief that I'm. In that place, we can start distancing ourselves from thoughts serving us and start that. Okay, I love this quote, and we'll kind of end on this, and in part 2 in July we'll jump into, you know, part 3 of this book. It's called Heading Out into the World. And it gives a lot of strategies of like, all right, what's the external? Like we're kind of been working on the internal. What's the external? How do we apply this practically and strategically in our lives? But to end kind of this internal work, let's end with this. The inner critic only wants what's best for you, but lets you know in an ineffective way. So it's kind of that like, run away, you know, that feeling, fear, run away. That's what that inner critic is. It's trying to protect us, but it's not serving us. So you say, so reason it, tell it how strong you are, and remind it that kindness trumps criticism. Now, inner critic, if you'll excuse us, it's time to go and face some fears. All right. So tell me, you know, and the challenge, I guess the challenge for you is use those worksheets, write out your reveals, practice that replace strategy. How bad would that really be? What are the odds? How could you cope? And especially this, how could you cope? You know, really get aware of what coping strategies do you have? As you step out into that uncomfortable, that place of discomfort, do you have a way to kind of regulate yourself internally? Do you have skills and tools to regulate yourself internally so you can handle that discomfort? Because I think that's an important piece of this, is when we're heading out into the world, like this second part is, do we have the skills and the coping strategies to manage ourselves in that discomfort? And I know you guys all do, because you're here and you've learned English and you've been practicing English and you've been doing it. So you all have learned to cope in some way, and you're actively doing it right now. You can just get better at it or find other tools and strategies as you're aware of it. Okay. And then practice embrace, that mindfulness and that self-compassion. All right. So we'll end here. I just want to open up for just kind of any aha moments. What for you? Oh, we had a lot that had to kind of leave today, so I understand that. But what for you was kind of an aha of something that you feel like you can take and use and apply in your personal life? So Abby, are you there?
I'm here, yeah, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
For
Share
me,
with us your takeaway.
Mm-hmm. I suppose for me, it has to be that for you to I had it a moment ago, but I suppose I suppose you have to be able to find a way to cope, like have some kind of strategy to be able to cope with whatever someone throws at you, right? So it can be shouting, or it can be yoga, it can be anything, but you can have your way of dealing with it. I think, yeah, that's for me, a takeaway.
Thank you, Abby. Ardan, do you have something, kind of a takeaway from today?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, for me it's just I was reminded about just you know, how you see yourself is basically um, where you're going to be at in the future, because overcoming, and for me, you know, it took, like I said, it took a lot, but it's just it goes down to basically just taking action of remembering, you know, you're not doing it because, you know, because you're comfortable. You're doing it because you're trying to get better. And I think, you know, looking back for me, you know, the reason why I was able to be fluent, and I could communicate a little better, and I could sound more clearly is because I took the courage and action of and said, you know what, enough is enough. I just want to be able to be communicated, be heard. And so just remembering my, you know, just reminding myself that whenever I have that anxiety and that coping, it's like, well, you know what, it's, you know, I'm always gonna make mistakes, but learning through those mistakes that could help me become a better person. And so, so yeah, really love it. I guess we're doing the second part. I mean, I'm gonna try to come next time, but as always, you know, it's been refreshment and very helpful, and I appreciate every time you do this. So thank you again.
Good. Thank you for coming, Arjun. All right, let's see. Cassia, let's hear, what's your takeaway from today? Something that you can kind of take away and, oh, you have to unmute. Make sure you unmute.
That's it.
There we go.
I take away today that I have to practice English. I have no afraid to make mistakes, and I have to answer the people to correct me. Please correct me, and not be afraid to answer to correct my mistakes, and so that the way I can be better English speakers. If someone who is a native speaker correct me, and not be afraid to ask for help when I need.
I love it. Yep, that's great. All right, good. Okay, Egil, let's go ahead and, am I pronouncing your name right?
No.
What is it?
Agle.
Agle. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Agle. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. I was been called ugly, eagle, all kind of things.
Oh, yikes.
Okay, so think that this year I just discovered that I am more exhausted of being anxious, that I am anxious, and I just started doing steps to become like less anxious. So like, you know, throwing yourself in the situations. I really like the example of rejection therapy from the book, Who Threw Himself 400 Rejection Options or something. So yeah, so that I am on the way. I am, oh, and also I read the Quiet book before, and I thought maybe I am introvert, maybe not. I read the other book, How to Influence People, and they were close somewhere by. And then I read this book, and this book was like, wow, an aha moment for me. That I think I am like extrovert who has social anxiety, and now everything is put in place. It's like, that's how it works. So now like I know how to move and work through it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm glad it's been helpful. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, you talk about avoid or endure. You know, she talks about avoiding or enduring. And at times I felt like I was enduring, and maybe you were doing the same thing. It's like you're stepping out, you're doing a lot of these things, but you're still feeling so anxious about it, and you got tired of feeling anxious. And I think that when we do the work and we kind of get an understanding of how to reframe things, how the strategies of how to do this, then we it's not just enduring, it's actually like coming to a place of peace and calm that is more long lasting, that we can actually, you know, let go of that anxiety instead of just holding on to it and saying, I'm going to live life even with the anxiety. It's like, no, we can actually let go of the anxiety and move on without it.
And one more short thing, that this book was such a relief, And like when I read that there are more people like this, that like this book is about me, I felt like, whoo, like I'm normal. That's what is happening with people. And like, I don't even need right now the ways to solve it. It's just enough for me to know that like I'm normal.
Yes.
And this was big relief.
Yes, so interesting. And I think that there's a lot of that, like even just shifting the mindset. It's like, oh, the strategies I'm already familiar with, I could probably already do that. But just even having one little shift in your mind could release so much of that. That's fantastic. Good. Okay, Minling. Here, go ahead and unmute, Min.
Found out that the fear comes from the not shy in personality, but the language itself. And second is I learned that be kind to myself and treat me with love.
Good, good, wonderful. Well, I'm glad that we were able to kind of discuss today. You know, I think that we probably could have wrapped this up into one, but I do think that the practice of being here, being aware, taking the time to be mindful and to dive in was important enough. And just even those internal shifts can make such a big difference, even without having the external, you know, doing the external work, because we know what the external work is, you know, for the most part is, we've talked about it, kind of stepping into that, getting the repetition, doing it before we're ready, things like that. She does have a lot of good, other great strategies that I think are going to be really helpful to kind of talk about and dive into. And I'm curious, like, what's working for you too. So we'll definitely kind of get into that in July, but I want to also circle back around. So hopefully you can all make it in July, circle back around and see what has happened since kind of getting the awareness, making the shifts. Egle, I'm excited to kind of see what continues to evolve for you as you've kind of released, worked on releasing a lot of that anxiety and doing the work. It's not something that happens right away, but it starts a process. It's almost like planting a seed, and it's like, okay, let's nourish that seed. Let's work on it, kind of work on those thoughts in your mind and see what develops from here. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for coming today. And you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Okay, go ahead and unmute and say bye. There you go. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.